Imagine being just 7 years old, lost in a vast and dangerous wilderness where saber-toothed cats roam. Food is scarce, and fire is your only defense against the darkness. No warm bed, no parents to protect you. Just your tiny hands, your instincts, and the cold, brutal reality of prehistoric life. Sounds impossible, right? But the shocking truth is some prehistoric children did survive on their own. Without modern shelter, without language as we know it, and without adults to care for them. How? What ancient survival instincts did they tap into? And what does this tell us about the forgotten resilience of early human childhood? This is the untold story of how prehistoric kids survived without parents, and it is far more incredible than you'd ever imagine. Imagine opening your eyes to the first rays of dawn, piercing through the leaves of a dense forest. You're cold, hungry, and completely alone. You're just a child, maybe 6 or 7. No mom calling your name, no dad watching over the fire. Just silence, ... except for the distant howls of predators. For most of us, this sounds like a nightmare. But for some prehistoric kids, this was life. In the ancient world, the death of a parent wasn't rare. Illness, predators, hunting accidents, anything could separate children from their families in an instant. But what's most haunting is what happened after. Archaeological evidence from sites like the Malta-Bore culture in Siberia or the Blombos cave in South Africa suggests that some very young children, possibly as young as 5 or 6, lived independently or formed small child-led groups when adults weren't around. Tools, tiny shelters, and even early forms of symbolic art made by small hands show that these kids weren't just wandering aimlessly, they were adapting. Anthropologists have long debated whether children could truly survive without parents in the wild. The surprising answer is yes, but only under brutal, desperate conditions. Human children were more physically resilient than we give them credit for. Shorter limbs, lower energy needs, and an almost supernatural ability to mimic and remember what they'd seen adults do. That meant if they'd watched how to start a fire just once, it might be enough. If they'd seen how to skin a rabbit or sharpen a stone, they could try it themselves. There is even evidence that some children left behind the groups that couldn't to protect them and joined others who could. Adoption wasn't a formal concept back then, but survival was. If a child could walk, feed themselves, and contribute in even the smallest way, another group might take them in. Not out of kindness, but out of necessity. Every warm body, every working hand, was one more chance to survive the night. When we picture prehistoric survival, we often imagine brute strength adults with spears, hunting in packs. But survival wasn't always about power. Sometimes it was about observation, intuition, and being fast to learn. And that's where children came in. Long before modern education, kids were wired to learn from their environment like sponges. They didn't have toys or classrooms, but they had something even more powerful: constant exposure to real, raw survival. From their first steps, children watched how their parents and elders moved, listened to every sound in the wild, and memorized how the clan reacted to danger. Scientists today know that the early human brain was especially plastic, meaning it could adapt quickly. Kids developed an uncanny ability to imitate adult behaviors almost perfectly. They didn't just pretend to hunt, they practiced with small tools, real ones, not made for play. By the time they were 7, many weren't children in the way we think of them. They were already active members of the tribe. But what happened when the tribe failed them? When parents were gone or too few to care for the young? That's when one of humanity's most unique strengths came into play: cooperation. Even among early humans like Homo sapiens and possibly Neanderthals, peer-to-peer caregiving existed. Older siblings stepped in. Teenagers became protectors. Children grouped together and created their own social bonds. In some cultures, a 7-year-old might already be caring for a toddler or hunting small prey alongside other kids their age. These groups weren't built on sentiment. They were built on instinct and survival. Alone, a child was vulnerable. But 2, 3, suddenly you had eyes to watch for predators, hands to gather roots and insects, and voices to call out danger. The early tribes that tolerated or supported orphaned kids, even unofficially, may have increased their own survival odds. Every child who lived on carried the tribe's genes and knowledge forward. That instinct to protect each other, even when resources were scarce, might be one of the earliest signs of true humanity. And it started with the smallest among us. In a world where one wrong move could mean death, prehistoric children didn't have the luxury of a slow childhood. Survival forced them to learn fast, and the skills they mastered were nothing short of remarkable. Picture a child no older than 8, crouched beside a riverbank, sharpening a stone into a blade. Not for fun, not for learning, for survival. That sharp edge could skin an animal, shape a spear, or cut through vines to build shelter. Every tool was a lifeline. Archaeological digs have uncovered tools so small, they were almost certainly made for or by children. These weren't toys. They were functional, practical, and deadly when needed. Flint knives, bone needles, and tiny hand axes, objects carefully shaped by young hands with an urgent purpose. Fire-making was another critical skill. Some children likely learned to keep coals alive through the night, feeding them just enough dried grass or bark. Others may have mastered the spark technique, striking rocks until a flame danced to life. Fire wasn't just heat, it was protection, light, and psychological safety. Without it, nighttime meant darkness and danger. Then came traps and hunting. Kids weren't expected to bring down mammoths, but small game like birds, lizards, and rabbits? That was fair game. They learned to lay snares from twisted fiber, dig pit traps camouflaged with leaves, and use throwing sticks or slings with surprising accuracy. The younger they started, the more refined their skills became. By the time they reached their early teens, some were already seasoned trackers, able to read broken twigs, paw prints, or the distant cry of a frightened animal like a language written across the earth. But perhaps the most incredible skill they learned wasn't physical, it was emotional resilience. These children carried immense fear, grief, and loneliness, yet they kept moving. They adapted. They endured. No bedtime stories. No soothing lullabies. Just the crackle of fire, the rustle of leaves, and the pounding heartbeat of a child who refused to die in the wild. They weren't just surviving, they were evolving. And in doing so, they carved the first footsteps in the long road that led to us. They weren't supposed to survive. Not without parents. Not in a world filled with predators, starvation, and cold nights that could swallow even the strongest adult. But they did. Prehistoric children, some no older than kids you see at a playground today, faced a level of hardship we can barely comprehend. And somehow they endured. They learned to build, to hunt, to lead, not because anyone taught them gently, but because the wild demanded it. And the wild does not wait for innocence. Their stories aren't carved in books or echoed in lullabies. They're hidden in bones, tools, footprints, long buried beneath the earth. But each of those fragments tells the same story. Humanity was never just about strength, it was about adaptability. Even our smallest members, left with nothing but instinct and grit, rose to meet the challenge. So next time you think of ancient humans, don't just picture the big game hunters or the tribal elders by the fire. Think of the children, alone, dirty, hungry, brave. Think of the ones who refused to die, even when the odds said they should. Because without them, without those wild, defiant kids, we wouldn't be here at all. If this story moved you, made you think differently about the strength hidden in the smallest among us, consider subscribing. We tell the stories history forgot about the humans who came before us and what they endured to survive. Leave a comment below. What would you do if you had to survive alone in the prehistoric world? Would you make it through the first night? Thanks for watching, and remember, we're all descendants of the children who never gave up.